Welcome to a Monday afternoon, or I guess midday stream. We're trying something a little bit new today. What we're going to be doing is talking about how people use Logic Pro as an income builder, not just your standard work in a studio and have clients, but maybe think outside the box a little bit. This is something that's on my mind a lot as I work with students at the university and helping them prepare for careers and talking to them about what they're going to do after graduation. So I'm hoping that we'll actually have some of you as well sharing things about this. Just FYI, I did turn on the chat just for subscribers only, but if you subscribe now, then after a few minutes waiting, then you'll be able to comment. We've had some issues with some people commenting and just taking up wasted time in there. So this is maybe something that'll help combat it a little bit. So first and foremost, I do have some thoughts about this and this whole conversation. And we'll also be taking questions from anybody who have them and want to actually ask questions about Logic. We'll do that towards the middle or end. But as we're going through some of these other things here, just let me know if you have things you specifically want to talk about or whatnot. I've made a short list of things, and then we'll break each of these down a little bit further. Some of these are going to seem like so obvious and generic, and perhaps some of them won't. For instance, in my specific situation, this can be different than a lot of people. As a professor in a music industry program, I get paid to teach, and I teach software. I do classes on Logic, but I also do this channel on YouTube, and it's monetized, and I do get a little bit of money each month from running ads on the content. And so there's that part of it, but I do want to actually look at some of these things a little bit closer and find out not only maybe some of your ideas, but also how you've been doing it. I feel like too often we have a lot of people who are using this software or any software and using it for the sake of using it instead of actually building a career out of it. So maybe this will be a good impetus for some of you to start that process a little bit further. So let's break down a few of these a little bit closer. And, with the engineering part of this, I think that there's actually some really interesting things that we can do with it. And hello to Jerome and Camille from the Netherlands and from Chile. Thanks for joining, and feel free to ask questions or jump in the discussion in the chat as much as possible. When I think of engineering, first and foremost, it's just being like somebody who facilitates other people's music. And that's kind of what I'm talking about in this case. Not even your own music for this, but facilitating what other people are doing. And that means either working in a studio or at your home studio or, on a laptop someplace. It could be anywhere. So in terms of engineering, I really feel like you could use pretty much any software. This isn't a Logic Pro specific thing. However, there are a few instances that I think people could be really taking advantage of. One of those things would be, and I'll write these down as we go, what I would call here in the States, like working with the high schoolers. Or the garage bands, it's like not garage band the software, but bands who, are working out of their garage, that level, kind of like an amateur type level. And forgive the handwriting, but it's what it is. And so Logic is so good at working with a band who is still perfecting their craft. Maybe of an amateur level. So from all of the flex, pitch, and time functions, to the, the tempo operations, to all of the quantization, uh, all of the effects, everything, the instruments that are there, the drum replacement options. Pretty much everything in this software is really good at being efficient when working with amateur musicians. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for engineers, for instance, wherever you are. If you tap into that type of demographic, that audience, then you're going to be able to not only find a lot of people who may be able to work or want to record and make albums or even just singles, but you're going to be able to really efficiently work with them. So the big fear, obviously, most of the time is if a band wants to work with me and, they're like, ooh, we're on a budget, can we do like a song for $100? And you think, okay, maybe. And then you do like all the math on the time to set up, to record. Maybe you have to borrow or rent some equipment, or, you're paying for a studio time. And all of a sudden that $100 ends up being like, $5 an hour, or wherever you are, whatever. Like that currency just doesn't go very far. I feel like with Logic, I could say yes to a band and set up a mixing board wherever they rehearse, record, and then take those tracks and very efficiently put them into a final product. So I could do that faster in Logic than I could do it in Pro Tools. I can do it faster in Logic than I could do it in Studio One, even though Studio One's great. I could do it way faster than someone working in Reaper. I'm just kidding. Reaper, you're the best. But it's just like this piece of software is so good at being efficient, and efficient with musicians who maybe aren't world class. If I'm working with a world class band, I could do that in any software. Pro Tools, just track them in and mix, and you start with great stuff. Pro Tools does great stuff with it. You end up with great stuff. Logic, on the other hand, is perfect for working with the amateur musician. So as an engineer, that's great. Working in a studio, maybe this isn't your only software that you know how to use. And so anybody can come to the studio and say, I've got my, rough draft, my temp tracks, my scratch tracks, all in GarageBand. It's just really nice to be able to say, well, let's bring in your GarageBand project and we'll just import it into Logic and keep on working on it, instead of having them say, you need to convert it all into a different program. So in that sense, it's nice to have another tool in your toolkit. I think with all of this, I think there's strengths and weaknesses with each of these software platforms, but this is one of the more obvious ones. Just being an engineer for other people and coming up with an hourly rate, or a per song rate, or whatever it makes sense for you in that situation. Earning some money by being an engineer is like one of the traditional ways of doing it. Okay, so that being said, pretty straightforward. I don't know if I have any additional thoughts, except I would say I've made more money using flex pitch in Logic than any other one aspect. Just seems like over the years, more people with vocal issues have come to me to make them sound better. And it's just like one of those tasks that it's super easy. I mean, as long as they're not too horrible, flex pitch and Logic does a good job. Even if they are horrible, you can just say, this was so far out of tune that it's going to sound a little bit robotic. And so there's always that thing, but it's like, this is as good as it's going to sound is what you can typically say. Okay, so the next thing here, let's talk about being a creator. And now Logic really has expanded its creation tools. It's become more like Ableton with the live loops, right? Which is kind of cool. So you can be a performer with this. You have main stage, which is part of Logic to a certain degree. So that gets used a lot in certain venues and performance situations. So we can put that here, I guess, as well. Main stage, right? Or you can choose Logic on the stage. I've done that as well. But not even Apple Loops. I don't count Apple Loops as a really great creative tool. I think they're a resource that you can use when you need them. But all the synthesizers and all the other instruments and the compatibility with all the leading third-party instruments, the MIDI effects, the audio effects, the drummer, all of these things make this an amazing creative tool. And in fact, the way that I often describe this, when people ask, what's the difference between, say, Logic and Pro Tools? I say Logic, well, I would usually say Pro Tools is more of like a tape machine, like a good old 1980s, 1990s 2-inch tape machine. It's really good and reliable at recording and playing back what you've recorded and then mixing. It's super good at that. And even editing, I think editing probably is a little bit better in Pro Tools than inside Logic. But Logic is more like an instrument. It actually brings some stuff to the table here. It's like, maybe not a fair comparison to say like a Stradivarius, but in a similar way, that instrument brings something that a normal violin wouldn't. And so I think that Logic in many ways is an instrument, not only in the sense that it brings something characteristic to the table, but also that you actually have to treat it like an instrument in terms of practicing and in terms of learning the quirks of it and figuring out how you want it to perform. But also it brings stuff to the table, and that's not always a good thing. In fact, for instance, the drummer track, I wonder how many people's at-home projects have been influenced by like Kyle the drummer inside Logic, right? So you do something and it brings something to the table, which means it influences your decisions, and then you end up sounding more like it. I've been, all over the world, and I've heard different places Apple Loops. All over the world, I've heard Apple Loops because they're free, royalty free. They're part of the software. People use them. They think this will be perfect for what I need. And there's like another 10,000 people doing the same thing. So in terms of creativity, you have to sometimes rise above the influences of Logic to really make sure you're doing something creative. And but if you're not a drummer, then the drummer track is great. If you're not a keyboard player, then using the smart instruments and GarageBand are really good options. So you have some things that it brings, but as a creator, this doesn't necessarily just limited to those live performances, but also like composition. You could be composing. There are websites that are always looking for new material that they can license out. So you could like make library music. That's one way to earn money. It's really actually really difficult to break into that without having a really good sense of what they're looking for. And these days I would say it's not necessarily a saturated market, but it's saturated enough that they're only looking for super high quality original things. And they have pieces of software that listen to what you're doing, and they can certainly go back and make those comparisons automatically. And if it sounds too much like something else, then they just reject it. So you have to actually be on your game for that. It's not just for anybody who wants to like make some simple piano thing. And I would say that it's better or often more likely to get those in if you're also recording actual instruments and not just using like virtual ones inside Logic. Other things for creating, it's like, I know there's a bunch of filmmakers who would love to get cheap music for their projects. So if you can get in those circles, I've done a few different film and television music projects over the years and have certainly been paid decently for those. But it's like challenging and fun, but also challenging, I guess. It's just, there's a lot of difficult parts to that. So you got to really understand the process of writing when you're not creative, writing under a deadline, figuring out different styles even if you're not familiar with them right off the bat, and a lot of that stuff. So it's creative, but it's also work, which means that you can't just let the creative process be on its own timeline. You have to take charge of the timeline itself. Trying to think of other things in the creator realm. There's so many. This is like endless. I think this is one of the more exciting parts of it. Doing some stuff for video games or YouTube video music or, podcast music. If you can find a podcast studio and pitch them that you could do music cheaper than whatever library that they're currently using, or give them custom stuff at a really fair rate. There's all these websites that will hire people to do music, like contract labor, for very cheap amounts. So you're not going to earn tons and tons of money, even though traditionally music composers always have done well when it's mere sunk with picture, but that's not always the case anymore. Music for media. Trying to think of other things here. Mr. Dan Master, was that something I said wrong, or are you asking a question, or are you suggesting something else? Music for music? Maybe that's what I said. I don't know. Anyway, so lots of different options in the creator realm. And I think that this, for some people, is the more exciting part, but it's also one of the trickiest parts. And so there's a lot of opportunity there, but a lot of things. Writing music for other musicians is certainly a thing that has been happening. If you can get your music to the right place, there's different places around the United States, at least, there are working groups for songwriters. And many times that you work together, you create demos, you pitch them to publishers who then have artists that they share those with. If you can create really great songs and great demos of those, then there's always a chance that you'll be able to get those purchased by like a publishing place that needs them. For sure. Okay, let's look at one of the next things, which is one of the things I do here. As a teacher, we'll talk about a couple different aspects for this. This one, obviously, school as one of the options is something that's, if you go to the university and get a credential to be able to teach, then you can get a job teaching music and music technology, or at a university teaching recording arts or audio production or sound recording, whatever they call it in each of those places. At my school, we call it recording arts, but I know that that's not an international term, although I think it's a good term, honestly. But there's other places, private lessons. This is something that I get approached about on a regular basis. And I've done these. I've actually had some people that I taught lessons to for years over Zoom. And I think it really helped them, and it was really interesting for me. It's certainly not a job that's repetitive or boring. You find it can be really exciting, and I get involved with their progress and like to see what they're doing. But money is tricky in that case, because a lot of people think, well, maybe if I'll just find another YouTube video someplace that's free, like what I'm doing right now, right? So it's like a free video, and you come on and you learn something and you walk away. You didn't invest any money except maybe watching some advertisements, right? If that's the price, that's the low bar, then at what point are you willing to invest money in actually getting training on a one-to-one basis? In my case, I keep it super simple. I'm in the middle of the cost range. This is not an advertisement. I'm not doing any private lessons right now. So this is not an advertisement, but when I was doing them, I just kept it super simple. I would charge $1 a minute, which is in the middle of the range. There are people who you would go to do a lesson with, and it would be, $100 an hour, $150 an hour. And then there's some where you could probably get it for like, $25 or something an hour. I don't know. I haven't seen too many that are that low, but I think there are some. And I just said, it's $1 a minute. So if we go 30 minutes, it's $30. If we go 60 minutes, it's $60. If we go longer, whatever. It's like we just start the timer and go. And it seemed to be understandable. Again, the issue being, minimum wage in the United States is, I think it's over $15 here in Denver now, an hour. So it's like I'm charging more than someone makes in an hour. And so you have to really want it and be able to afford it. And usually the people who I would be working with had money sitting around, at least some, to be able to invest in that, because it was important that they could do certain things and they had some other plan that they wanted to be really good at. So you never know. And I found at some point, if you're offering lessons or teaching, you don't want to offer too little, because then nobody feels the investment of it. And I've offered like free classes. I started one last summer. It kind of imploded a little bit, but we did it last summer, and it's like we had like 20 people sign up for this free course I was doing. And by like the second week, 4 people were participating. It wasn't a bad course, I don't think. But something about offering a free course makes it less valuable to people. And so you have to kind of figure that side of it out a little bit. Just like free music makes it less valuable. I can't tell you, it's like when I was a teenager and trying to buy an album or then CDs or cassettes, it's like save up my pennies, excuse me, and then go to the store and buy it and carry it home and read all the notes. And it's like now it's like everybody has like Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, and they just listen to whatever, and it doesn't mean as much. So that's part of it. Another thing on here would be YouTube. All of you could create a YouTube channel. Bjorn is asking how do the payment mechanics work when teaching online pay in advance. I always did pay in advance because once or twice I got burned, and then I said, you know what, that's not worth it. So I was using, I'd have to remember what service that was. It's one of those online payment schemes where they also had the card readers. Oh my gosh, square.com, I think, or one of those. It's not cube.com. I think it's Squarespace. They have that where you can get like a card reader for in-person transactions, but then they also have a scheduling system. And so I would do the scheduling system. People would sign up for a time. The transaction company would take a percentage of the money, just a small percentage, but a little. And I would get a notification that someone had booked a slot and that they had paid, and then they would get an automatic reply with a Zoom link, and then we would meet up and go from there. So I would do it in sections of time. And if like they were like, can I get an extra 20 minutes? I'm like, that's fine. I've got the time. Then it's like I can also, because they've already done the transaction, I can charge them an additional amount, a pre-agreed upon amount. And so it worked out really well when I was doing it. Then I see a bunch of comments coming through. Use Monero. I'll have to look that up. I don't know that one. Square is the one, as Mr. Dan said, ETH or BTC, peer-to-peer 24/7, pure internet money. Oh, yeah. I'm old school. I use dollars. Um, Sweet. Lots of options, but always have an agreement in place beforehand. And uh, it's nice to use one of those things like Square, because if for some reason you've let them down, say that you really didn't teach them anything in the 30-minute slot that they have, they can always go and file a complaint, and you'll either have to pay them back or they'll get you off the service. Holds you accountable, holds them accountable. I've never had someone so far to date ever say I didn't give them the value that they were hoping for. I do. I wouldn't be teaching that in that way if I didn't feel like I could bring value to it. Sweet. Okay, so continuing on. So YouTube, all of you could make a YouTube channel. I just taught an entire class on this at the university, and I had students who were getting subscribers and views, and it's exciting to see that process happening. It takes some time when you're starting from scratch, or it takes money, one or the other. But most importantly, it takes the willingness to learn some of the skills needed to do it. I don't think it's not so easy that just anybody can do like a Logic Pro channel, but we have a number of them on there. We have some that are really successful, and mine is like medium. And then we have a bunch of people who've started channels and done like 6 videos and then stopped. We've have all kinds of range. I just have when I first started on my YouTube channel, the very beginning, it was when the internet was first born. I'm just kidding, but kind of. It's like when YouTube, I had one of the first, YouTube channels. I didn't do Logic content back then. I did some synthesizer content, and then I stopped making stuff for a long time, and then restarted up like 7 or 8 years ago, and I just never stopped again. So slow growth over a long period of time means bigger numbers in the end. And so it's that part I think is enjoyable. If you have the patience and the curiosity and the willingness to try something, then you can do it in this format. And you'll eventually get monetized and people will pay you. And if you have a little bit of money sitting around, you can promote your videos and grow even faster. And then there's other tips and tricks too. But for those, you'll have to pay me to teach you. Just kidding. Bjorn says, where or how did you mainly do the marketing of your teaching service? And I would say on my YouTube channel for me. And then every once in a while I get some members of the university community that ask, and I point them to it there as well. But I usually do like when I'm thinking about restarting up, but I have to have like really tight parameters. Here's my problem, and this is, if any of you've watched, I know a few of you have because I've seen your names, but for those of you who've watched my live streams in the past, you'll notice one really big thing is that I only ever like post up that I'm going to do a live stream about 10 minutes before I do it. I just don't have the bandwidth always to know. It's like I'm doing other stuff. I got a work call at the university, or picking up a kid from school or something. And so I don't always schedule those in advance. And then I look at the clock and I think, I've got an hour right now. I'm going to go do a live stream. And so that's when they come out. So doing lessons can be really tricky for me because I don't want to always plan it out super in advance. And I also have a really hard time doing them at certain times of day. Like in the late afternoon, evening, I really don't like to do the lessons at those times, personally. And so I'm thinking, Monday, Wednesdays, during the day in my time zone, I could like set aside 2 hours on Monday and 2 hours on Wednesday every week. I could probably do that. So if I were to do it again, I would pick those times and say, these are my only times. And then I would every video for like a month, just remind everybody, hey, if you're interested in lessons, I'm doing one-on-one lessons. It's, a fixed rate, and you get it, we'll address whatever you want. I can teach you whatever part of this you want. Software, music industry, composition, whatever you want, we can focus on. Just sign up here at this link. And so then people would find the link, and over like a few months, it's like I started, each time I've done this, I've been able to get people right away. I did Patreon before I did the Square Space one. And so all of those have worked decently to get me like a handful of people who are doing lessons on a consistent basis. I think that's super repeatable for other people who have all of the knowledge to share. But having some sort of audience to talk to about it, I think is a big step. And that's the tricky part. In my case, I came out of my, college experience, my undergraduate one, then I went and got a master's degree in teaching. And that gave me a leg up because I actually was trained how to teach and trained how to, to know what to do with students and how to ensure that a class runs smoothly and that we do all the important things like introductions and, following up and making assignments and so all of those things pedagogically, the pedagogy of teaching, I may have been trained for, but a lot of people do that very naturally. And so I don't think that you necessarily need a degree to do that. Hope that was helpful, Bjorn. So with YouTube, my views are higher right now than they've been in a long time, and the revenue's down. And so I don't know. I think overall YouTube is having its own struggles right now, and it'll be interesting to see how over the next couple of years. I know that YouTube is still making like $1 bazillion. They're just not passing it all of it on to everybody. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens with it, but I'm here as long as YouTube is letting us make videos and monetizing. And even if they took away the monetization, I'd probably still do a live stream, a couple times a month, just because I actually like people and talking about this stuff. The money is just a perk. And I make anywhere with the content I've been doing. If you look back, it's like more live streams now than other videos, but not tons and tons of viewership overall. I make like $200 to $300 a month from YouTube. And then you have to factor in taxes and all the other stuff. So it's not a ton of money, but it's certainly a nice little bonus each month. So that's kind of fun. And you could do that too. I mean, anybody can do it. You just have to be patient and time it right so that people can find your content. But if any of you who are watching right now are like, I really want to do a YouTube channel, then write me a message and let's do like a collaboration. Let's both of us get on screen once and talk and maybe make a video as long as it's one or two people, not 100 people, it's like we'll cross market each other. I mean, that's the beauty of this whole platform. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So that's it for the teaching stuff, I think. The one other real big area that I have never done and will never probably do is coding, making plugins. But I know some of you out there watching this may have some coding experience and some good ideas. It's like, make your own plugins, or get hired by a company that makes them and do that. But I think doing some of this would be really interesting. Less technical than plugin making would be like sample banks. This is a way to get in without necessarily having to code at all, but you can make samples and sell those. It's hard. That's not like a big money maker, I don't think, but it certainly is like an additional thing that that you could be a part of. So think of all of this less as, the one thing that you'll do, and instead think of this as all of the stuff you're going to do, right? So it's like, what are all of the things you could do? And I'm going to delete those things there. Let's see. It's like you put yourself in the middle here. It's like one of these idea charts, right? So put me in the middle. So the university is going to be my big thing. I mean, they give me health insurance and a retirement plan and a consistent monthly paycheck every month. Cool. YouTube is going to be a much smaller part of it over here, right? And maybe if I start lessons up again, it would be over here. And then all of the creative stuff over here, it's like I've scored films and things, and I've made quite a bit of money doing that. I would say auto-tune is still probably one of my top earners across my entire career, fixing people's vocals. I'm good at it. I've got patience for it. It's fun. And so, it's like the engineering part. I'll put this over here as the grind for me. The engineering part is more, when I have to do other people's stuff, that's more of the grind. So it's like all of those things together. That's what makes up my career. And then we expand. It's like as if YouTube were to grow for me and do more, then I could do, attach some other stuff over here. Patrons on Patreon, right? I don't have an active Patreon account. I mean, it's active, but I have it turned kind of mute right this moment. I've tried a few things with that, and I think I could do it. I've gotten it up to like $200 a month. So that with the YouTube money of like $200 a month, it was like I was getting about $400 to $500 a month from using Logic, and not even using it as much as talking about Logic. That's not a bad little gig, right? And so, but for me, because I have this other thing over here, I should probably put like a bigger circle around teaching at the university, just because that's the first thing. If I have a list of things to do and there's something from the university on that list, I do that first because that's my employer. That's my main gig. My students are my most important priority. And all the rest of the stuff is just a side thing for it. I've done over the years more and less of the studio grind. And that's partially just because the hours. It's like I've had a couple studios that I worked really well with the people there. And they're like, can you do more? Can you do more? And I'm like, no, I can't do more. I've got a full day job at the university. I wanted to have kids and do that. My oldest twins are 18 this year and going off to college. And so it's like, do I really want to be in the studio every evening and at the university during the day? Not really. So it's like choices. I had to make a choice of what was more important. A question from Jerome says, how does flex pitch compare to Melodyne? I would imagine people could do that themselves, but maybe don't want to. And if you do it often enough, it gets easier quicker. That's the thing about all of this stuff, Jerome. There's very few things in life. There are some things. There are very few things in life that we can't figure out ourselves and do them. I have found that a lot of people just don't have the bandwidth to figure some of that stuff out. Not that they couldn't, not that they wouldn't be rewarded by it, but they're not. And so here's how one or two lessons have gone with me in the past. Like a lesson teaching Logic. Someone says, teach me how to use flex pitch so that I can do this. And so I'll start with the demonstration. I'll say, here's a vocal that I did. And let me walk you through the process. I do it all. They say, okay, this is doable. And then I show them all the intricacies of it and how to fix notes and adjust the performance if you have a harmony so that the words line up right and they end at the right time, or we need to edit them out and do fades. It's like all those basic things. And at the very end, they say, okay, I can do this. And then they go try to do it. And they come back and they say, I didn't fully understand this. And I say, okay, let me show you this let me show you this again. So, we'll record it. You can have a video of it and everything. And about that time, a few people, they either do this. One, they go and they figure it out and they master it because they realize the value of being able to do it themselves and learning how to get better at it. The other times, they watch me do it. They've experimented with it and realized that this is a skill that's going to take some time. And they say, how much if you'll do this for me? And I say, well, here's same rate, for whatever. And I go do it, send it to them. And then next time it comes back, I get another one. And so it's like some people realize that they probably could learn how to do it. They just don't have the time to actually learn how to do it. In terms of flex pitch and Melodyne is world class. It's really great. Flex pitch comes installed with Logic for the price you paid for Logic, however many years ago you paid for Logic. And so for me, I don't want to keep up paying for the Melodyne thing. And what I found out is that flex pitch is really good as long as you use it in a certain way. So you can't just, it's not the same. You are more likely to have artifacts, especially with vocals that are further out of tune. And Melodyne can probably do more with it, but I figure, once you master flex pitch, you'll know where that line is, and you'll be able to really work within those boundaries and make sure you're backing things up so you never mess anything up with flex pitch, and you can get really great results with it. Mr. Dan says, you're supposed to pay for Logic? Yes. And doggone it, Logic is one of the cheapest programs out there in the scope of how many times they've had paid upgrades, which is not a lot in a long time. And VJ Beat says, you're doing it right now, making money by you're talking about Logic on YouTube. That's exactly right. I'm not making very much right this second because a view, it's like, it's not very much. Live streams, I've got 104 views so far. We're talking like pennies right this moment. So don't feel bad that you're contributing to this. It's certainly not costing anybody and bringing in a lot. I get money because of what I've have done in the long run, which was try to make videos that people want to find later, not just right this moment. And so I get a lot of views from old content that are still relevant. And so it all adds up if you do enough of that. Anybody makes 1,000 videos on YouTube that anybody wants to watch, and you're going to start earning money. There's no way around it if you do that many and anybody wants to watch them. And if you make 1,000 videos and nobody wants to watch them, then you're still not going to make any money. So, but I would say right this moment, we're talking about pennies. So nothing to brag about, that's for sure, on a single live stream. Although I love doing live streams. I like doing live streams right now better than the others, partially because of all the comments that are coming in, right? I really love the interaction with people more than just making a video and hoping that somehow people will watch it. And I really like my new setup right here where I get to draw on the screen behind me. Let's see if I can do an arrow pointing at my head. Oh, that was weird. Let's do that one again. Now you're watching a video. It's even better, interactive. There we go. What a show. What like an amazing interactive video you got. Mr. Dan says, I think my second album will slap because people at school are starting to figure the first one out and they like it. And the first one was just GarageBand and iPad. I mean, you can do works of art on the stupidest apps. It doesn't even matter. You know, I do work in Logic, obviously, quite a bit. And I've got a lot of stuff happening right now, a few different songs in progress. But I think they're all just tools. The sooner everybody realizes that nothing's going to create it for you, and you need to like spend the time to actually understand the musical part of it and the creativity part of it, the better. I mean, it's like we're looking at, you know, I have all these tracks over here. I still use just the default color scheme in Logic, even though I've done videos and talked about the benefits, pros and cons of different things. This is my color scheme most of the time. This tool, I mean, hopefully you all get to the point with Logic or any software where it no longer is it's not the gateway to making music anymore. Meaning you don't feel like it's like an impedance or it's just there. And what you do is you come in and say, oh, I've got this idea. You make the idea work. You improve the idea. You craft your words, or if there's no words, then just the music. And you're thinking, okay, I like this. It's like, ooh, creative melting pot of all the ideas. And you use the tool to get you there. It's like a vehicle, but I don't think about my car all that much. It's like I take it in for an oil change when I need to and get my tires rotated and new brakes when they tell me. And it's like, but I get in the car and I go someplace and then I come back and I go someplace and I come back. And every once in a while I clean it out because my kids make a mess. I'm not one of those people who's like, I need a Tesla so everybody will stare at me. Reaper, this is going to sound horrible. Reaper is the Tesla of the audio industry right this moment. It's like, we're cool. We got Reaper. I'm like, who cares? Use Reaper. Reaper's great. Reaper's awesome. But don't make it about the software you use. I say this all the time in all my streams, so this is not just me pretending to be self-righteous or on a soapbox. Literally, this is my message every time. Learn how to use your tools well enough so that you don't have to think about them anymore. And you get to just think about the music all the time. Whatever software you want to use. And Jerome, you're the best. Thanks. That is so true. Now the stream is worth it. And it gives me a chance to celebrate it. Woohoo! Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, all the rest of you. I mean, look at what an amazing person we have here. We're going to go back. Let's see, switch out the camera view. I'm going to do a stream probably tomorrow or the next day because I'm getting my new audio interface. I'm getting one of the SSL 12s, the little USB one that has 12 inputs, 4 of their historically amazing preamps with the 4K switch on them. So it has 4 inputs there, and then it has a light pipe, so I can do from this interface right here. It's one of the old Scarlett 18i20s. You can route all the preamps straight to the light pipe. So that'll be my extra 8. It's gonna be so amazing. We have an SSL console at the university, which I teach on every week. It's not as awesome as one of the big consoles, but it's one of the 24 channel ones that has EQ on every channel strip, but not compression on every channel strip. So that's the divider. But it's an amazing console. So it's like I need to do some videos live from the studio downtown. It's a really cool place to run Logic. But the new interface will come, and I'll be doing some videos on that here from the home place. Let's see. Evar says, I've made my new album with Logic 10.4.8. It's awesome. I do the mix work and send my work to a master and mastering. What I got back was stunning. My album came this year. Awesome. Congratulations. That's great news. Mr. Dan says, oh yeah, I'm definitely getting better at music in general. I understand the importance of that. How do you think the piano roll compares to scoring? Well, so I use the piano roll for editing. I never handwrite stuff in, but that's just because I know at least enough to be super dangerous on a keyboard. But I think the piano roll is as good as any piano roll out there from any other software. And then Evar says, can I just get Valhalla Supermassive as an EFX plugin to add to Logic? Or did you just get it? Okay. Hopefully that's what you're saying. It's the Valhalla is a terrific plugin. I don't have it in my toolkit right this moment, but I've heard a lot of love for that particular tool. I've got right now too many different options for everything, and I try to mostly get the most out of what I have. But I'm just getting into the SSL plugins as well, because I know some of them come with that interface, but it's like I've got all the Eventide, and it's like I've got Reason Rack, and it's like I'm at the phase in my life where I'm more nostalgic for things than I probably used to be. And so I'm going back to things that I've used over my career rather than always looking for the next thing. But some of those companies certainly have been doing some really forward-thinking things as well. The new EQ, the split EQ from Eventide is amazing for sure. Mr. Dan says, how to get better at alchemy. So you should really go back, look on my channel. I did a series like just a few months ago where I went through all of alchemy in like a 6 or 7 part live stream series. So if you really want to learn more about that, there's also some other people who have done some great series on YouTube about that. So you can certainly figure out some of the other tools out there and video tutorials that people have made. But I did a series on alchemy, which I'm really proud of. And it's a live stream series, so there are people asking questions and things like that. But they're each like 40 minutes long, going through those tools. Really cool. I love alchemy. Alchemy is amazing. Almost as good as sculpture. I did a series about sculpture as well. Dave says, I have Logic from 2017. It can't update due to the age of my old Mac Mini. Is it worth upgrading to a new Mac Mini to get latest version of Logic? I'm in a bit out of the loop. So I don't know. It really depends. In our Hollywood culture here in the United States, we have that saying, if you build it, they will come, referring to the Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, that movie. If you build it, they will come. That's like the opposite advice I give to anybody in the audio industry. Don't think about paying money to do something with the expectation that people will come and support it at the back end of it. That is a dream. I don't think that's a reality. I've known too many people who have gone out of business or gone into debt, and for what? For something that that wasn't really a great investment. And so I don't recommend that. I recommend if you are doing something and the tools are working for what you need, then keep doing it until you have some sort of financial investment into what you're doing outside of yourself. On the other hand, if you have the money and you're like, no, this is something that's important to me and I've got the cash for this, then yeah, I mean, the new Mac Mini M2 is incredible. And you're going to be able to do all the cool stuff, right? Like the new gain tool alone, if you work with audio files, is one of the best things since sliced bread, right? So the gain tool is where you can just like go around the tool and adjust all your audio levels. I mean, holy crap. Why haven't we been able to do that long before now? But we couldn't, and now we can, and you can't do it until you upgrade. Evar says, okay, Mr. blah, blah, blah. And the new Mac Mini is a really good price, I think. And then Evar says, I start with Logic 5.5. Logic 10 is a big step, for sure. I've been a Logic user for a very long time, and I love it. I've gotten to the point where it no longer feels like I'm always fighting a piece of software. Not that I wasn't even in the beginning, but I really was kind of. When I first was using Logic, it was between Logic and Pro Tools. Pro Tools I've always used professionally at the university. I even had a license of it privately. And I could do things in Pro Tools so well. All the key commands, I still got most of them. One time I was doing a session in Beijing, China, and I rented a studio, and I got there. Nobody spoke English, and my Mandarin is pretty poor, but I mean enough that I could like converse slightly. And the guy was like, "I don't know how to switch it to English, the software, and it's all in characters, Chinese characters." And I don't read or write Chinese. I speak Chinese. And I just ran the entire Pro Tool session off key commands. And the guy was like blown away because when I saw him engineering, he was doing everything with menus and with his mouse. And I was like, I can't do that. I don't know where things are. I don't know what they mean. So I did it all with key commands, ran the whole session. And I think he had a really deep appreciation for what key commands mean after that. And so that's where I was with Pro Tools. And I started using Logic, and there were certain things in the early days of Logic when even before and after Apple bought Logic from eMagic. I mean, there was like in this main window, which you can't see, in this main window over here, you couldn't do like sample down to the sample base of editing. It's like you were stuck with MIDI ticks, and it wasn't all the way down to the sample level. And it's like stuff like that would drive me crazy. And so it's like you had to go to the file editor to really do down to the sample editing and make sure you're doing editing at 0 point across the audio file, all that stuff. It's like all of that, it was clunky in Logic in the early days. Now, most of those things they've fixed. Most of them. And I would say when I come in here and like edit vocals and stuff, I don't even like think twice. I work and I do things, and I've gotten to the point now where I was with Pro Tools originally, and I think that that's a huge boost. Evar says, my first recording was Atari 1040 STE. Sweet. My first recording was on a 2-inch Atari analog tape machine. Evar says, I have gone through all sounds and Logic X samples. Yeah. It's like knowing your tools, learning your tools, so important. I can't overstate how important it is just to really spend the effort to do that and to do it well. In terms of a career in audio, this is where we'll end because it's just about 1:30 in my time. Where I'll end is that I think with anything that's worth doing, it's not only worth doing right, but it's worth being patient until it happens. When I talk to students at the university, I may have a class of like 20 students. Are all those 20 students going to make it successfully in the music business? Probably not. Especially if they all want to just like work in a recording studio and be a famous engineer. There's even a smaller percentage that will become famous musicians. I mean, they have a better chance of making it in the NFL, probably. And so it's not about, following a formula to be successful. It's about following the formula and waiting. It's like the right time, if and when it comes, you have to be in the right place. And so you have to put yourself in the right place so that the right time, when it comes, that you can jump on it and follow it. That's I think how we're going to end this. Any other comments or questions? This is the time if you have any other stuff. Jamal said one of the most intelligent things of this whole chat. I loved Soundtrack Pro. I really did. It was great. We were starting to use it on some smaller like TV commercial works at a post-production studio I was working at. You could do this thing. Had an EDL comparative analysis tool, edit decision list. I don't know if you know much about post-production video. So Final Cut could send to Soundtrack Pro and then later send it again to Soundtrack Pro. And I could look at all the changes the video editors have made, and it would like incorporate them all into my timeline with all of my audio. It was like good. It wasn't perfect, but it was really good. And it meant I could start working before the video editors were even done, before they had locked picture. And that was the promise of that. I was hoping that we would get another version and it would work better, and another version would work better, and we would keep on getting improvements. And Apple just is like, we're done. And they close it down. So that was a disappointment. And it had all the offline process history, like Cubase and Nuendo, which means, so for instance, we have selection-based processing in Logic, but once you do it, it's like rendered into the file. I have to use playlists. So I make a new playlist, a duplicate, and then I add processing to it so I can always go back to the original super easily. Well, in Soundtrack Pro, if you did that, you would have a list of all the things you did, and then you could go back and change one of them, and it would ripple effect through. It was just so much smarter. So much smarter. And I missed some of those features. The rest of it was pretty similar. You could do almost everything else. There was just a handful of features which we lost, but oh well. Reaper is also a good DAW to make music. I disagree. It is a good DAW for a lot of things. Reaper is a great DAW for doing spatial audio. It's a great DAW for recording and editing. It's a great DAW if you are cheap and don't want to spend a lot of money. It's a great DAW if you want to have a developer and a community around the DAW, but it is not a good DAW for making music. It doesn't have that many tools. Everything is third party. A lot of the stuff doesn't work very well. The stuff that was coded. It's just not a great DAW for creatively composing music. I would disagree with that 100%. But it is a good one for a lot of reasons. And I would say the people who use it are very loyal. And for that, we should give them a standing ovation. Every time I bring up Reaper, I have to use one of my sound effects. Dave says, I've started using my guitar to play MIDI into Logic with a wireless pickup. It's without delays. So you can play live. That's cool. Yeah, we've had a lot of, not a ton of interest from people in that over the years. I know there have been some tools you can do MIDI control with guitars and stuff, but um, I feel like there's a bunch of guitarists who, no matter how good that gets, will never want it. And so I don't think that a lot of manufacturers are like dying to create new tools. A live stream bingo card next time. You should. Oh man. We should. I'll do that. We should do that. I'll put out some ones, and whoever gets bingo first, I'll give them a Mac Mini. I'm just kidding. That would be crazy. I'm still working on an idea to do some sort of competition or something, with the prize being my old Mac Mini M1. Now that I have my Mac Studio Ultra, my Mac Mini M1 is sitting, gathering dust. So I'll figure that out. It's like, has to be pretty severe, because that's like almost $1,000, but we'll figure it out. I would like to do it so that maybe when I get 20,000 subscribers, I'm at 18,000, almost 500. If I could just get all of you all, anyone who watches these things, to like spread out their social media and make sure people know about my channel. If I could have people document how many people they share that to. It's like 1,000 or something like that. The first one to 1,000, give them a Mac Mini M1. That'd be awesome. Thanks, Palo Alto. That means a lot. It really does, sincerely. And then Dave says, do you think VR music production will be a thing? I hope so. I've been putting a lot of my research into that. I don't talk about it all that much, but I've been doing research with impulse responses, creating ambisonic impulse responses, which are used in the VR platforms. And it's going into my new book that I'm working on for Focal Press. And there's going to be a whole chapter on the VR music part of it and spatial audio. So I'm hoping that it does. Not so much Dolby Atmos with Apple, but some other platforms. So we'll see about that. Ivar says, advice is always what your spirit sharer who hit. Agreed. I like Ivar. Good words. Jerome says, shipping worldwide will also be painful. That is so true. Oh man, I did a mix competition 2 summers ago. Oh, and I gave away a copy of all of my books to the one who won. Nice, super nice guy in Germany. And I shipped him the books. It cost me like $80. And for some reason, wasn't able to get the books and didn't see the sign or something to pick them up, and then they got returned to me. I did not ship them twice, unfortunately. Next time I'm in Germany, I'll see if I can get into him, but $80 that got returned to me. I was like, oh, that's sad. And Music LM, I've been definitely watching closely to that, Bjorn. I think it's really interesting. Jerome, all my books are print books, so I shipped them all. Some of them were hardback, I think. Ooh, it was a heavy box. So yeah, I'm going to talk more about my new book on here at some point. It's Focal Press, which is part of Routledge. They're a nice publisher out of the UK. They do a lot of audio technology books and recording and sound recording, topical books, and music industry books. I've done a bunch for them in the past, and we're doing a new one all about social media and building a career in social media for musicians. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I think 140. I think this is a good place to pull the plug, even though we got about 15 of you on here. That's great. As Ivar says, everybody, stop watching YouTube and go make some music. Jeez, like what are you even doing here? I'm just kidding. It's good to fine tune your skills and to be a part of a community, which is why we do this. That's perhaps far more important than you even realize is getting to know people and building a community around the thing that you love doing. And so keep doing that. But at some point, get off YouTube and go like make a new song. And next time we're on a live stream, share your music stuff. And then there was one other question here. Let's see if I can find the link for it real quick. So I'm just on if you do focalpress.com, it'll take you to Routledge. And right here. And then Sam McGuire. Ooh, I just added a little dash. Left-handed typing. That's me right there. So my very first book, which was 2000, it's out of stock right this moment. Interesting. But let's see if they click through to my other ones. So I did one. Ironically, we were talking just a few minutes ago about the Video Editor's Guide to Soundtrack Pro. We published that book like 6 months before they canceled the software, which is a huge frustration. One about sampling, making sampled instruments in 2007. So we're getting close to 20 years on that. Modern MIDI, and one about digital orchestration. It's really about the MIDI tools behind orchestration. And then one about synthesis. So those are the 5 books. I'm trying to think of, I think that's all of them. And then one new one. So we're going for book number 6, and then I think I'll stop writing books forever. Because book writing is a lot of work. So yeah, focalpress.com or routledge.com, and then just type in Sam McGuire. Okay, that's it, everybody. I'll catch you on the other side. Like I said, we'll be doing another stream in a day or two once I get my new audio interface. Probably Wednesday is my guess. And then we'll go from there. Thanks so much for those of you with the super chats. You are literally my heroes, I guess. And that's it. Bye, everybody.